The first 5 minutes of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms open with the title theme. The same music burned into your brain from Game of Thrones before it cuts off completely and shows the main character having a HBO spent a decade training audiences to expect dragons, royal blood, and someone doing incest in the first episode. What they got instead was Duncan the Tall, a tall, awkward man with no credentials, no money, and no connections, who desperately wants to become a knight. And somehow, across 6 episodes, that turned out to be exactly what Westeros and we needed. Game of Thrones, by its final seasons, had lost the thing that made it great: a good script, well written characters, and a sense that the world actually had weight to it. House of the Dragon tried to fix that and ended up screwing up again. The show forgot that people didn't fall in love with Westeros just because of the throne. They fell in love with the road to it and the people who'd never get anywhere near it, not some weird fan fictions about already written characters. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is humble, honest, and surprisingly soulful. Where House of the Dragon strained under its own importance, this show wanders dusty roads and sits in taverns and lets the scenes and characters breathe. The stakes are smaller, no red witches with visions, no dragon-on-dragon aerial battles, but somehow they feel bigger. It's really because they feel very personal and human, like a slowed-down Westeros for us peasants. The best relationship in the entire Westeros franchise right now is between a giant and a bald kid. Nobody had that on their bingo card. Dunk trained under Sir Arlan, whose death sent him chasing his luck at a tournament. Egg presses himself forward as Dunk's squire. Dunk keeps saying no, Egg keeps showing up. Dunk says no again, Egg still not giving up, and eventually Dunk just gives in. That dynamic carries the whole show without ever straining. One man, too decent for his own good. One boy way too sharp for his age, stuck together on a road that keeps getting worse. Peter Claffey nails a perfect balance of sweetness, awkwardness, and firm principles, and his expressions are genuinely funny. Dexter Saul Ansel as Egg plays the smarter half of the pair without making Dunk look stupid, which is actually a harder job than it sounds. And the show never gets enough credit for threading that needle. I'm not saying it's totally perfect. The show definitely is not flawless. Episodes are around 30 minutes, and they tend to end right when things are starting to get interesting. 6 episodes for a story this layered feels short in the wrong places. You want more time on the road, more time in the taverns, more of Dunk figuring out what kind of knight he wants to be before the world just decides for him. The darkness hinted at early on finally surfaces, and it spreads from a decision Dunk makes that threatens not just his own life, but the peace of the realm. Finn Bennett, as Prince Aerion Targaryen, makes that shift land hard. Bennett plays Aerion with a controlled madness, a villain whose appetite for war has no outlet in a Westeros that's settled into peacetime. He's the show's reminder that yes, this is still Westeros. We still have crazy Targaryens around here, just seen from a much lower angle. Game of Thrones ended in 2019, and the franchise has spent 6 years trying to earn back the trust it torched in those final episodes. House of the Dragon got close, then wobbled. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms makes the case that fantasy television can still surprise you, and that bigger is genuinely not always better. The show doesn't ask you to forget the last few years of Westeros content. It just quietly proves that the world still has stories worth telling, stories that don't need a single dragon to work. Dunk is a bit of an oaf, but one with a heart of gold and a wisdom rarely seen in Westeros characters. That's what the franchise had been missing. Not more complexity or political maneuvering. Just a person you actually want to follow, and feels like we would act the same. Westeros, at its best, was never really about who sits on the throne. It was about the people sleeping in ditches below the castles, trying to hold on to something like honor in a world that keeps making them pay for it. Dunk and Egg understand that instinctively. Their dedication to each other never wavers in the face of danger, and in a franchise built on betrayal and chaos that ends up meaning more than any battle scene could. The show leaves room for more. Whether HBO gets the follow up right is a question for another day. What's already here is worth every one of those 6 short episodes, and it's probably the most Westeros has felt like itself since Arya and the Hound were wandering around, getting into trouble together. Which, not coincidentally, is exactly the energy this show was going for. Remember to get vaccinated, guys.